The sixth sutta, 1.6, as Savatthi, standing to one side, the Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. How many are asleep when others are awake? How many are awake when others asleep? By how many does one gather dust? By how many is one purified? And the Buddha said, 5 are asleep when others are awake. 5 are awake when others asleep. By 5 things one gathers dust. By 5 things one is purified. So here what does the Buddha mean? 5 are asleep when others are awake, and 5 are awake when others are asleep. These refer to the 5 hindrances and the 5 faculties. When your 5 faculties are asleep, then your 5 hindrances are awake. Or when your 5 faculties are awake, then your 5 hindrances are asleep. They are like kind of opposite to each other. They are opposed to each other. And then one gathers dust, means the dust of defilements, by 5 things. The 5 hindrances make us have these dust of defilements. And 5 things make us purified, are the 5 faculties. Just now I mentioned the 5 faculties. Faith, energy, recollection, concentration and wisdom makes one purified. The 7th sutta at Savatthi, standing to one side, that Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Those who have not penetrated things, who may be led into others' doctrines, fast asleep, they have not yet awakened. It is time for them to awaken. And the Buddha said, those who have penetrated things well, who cannot be led into others' doctrines, those awakened ones, having rightly known, fare evenly amidst the uneven. So, when the Buddha says, those who have penetrated things well, who cannot be led into others' doctrines, the Buddha refers to the Aryans, the eight Aryans, the 4 paths and the 4 fruitions. And the awakened ones, or the fully awakened ones, are the Buddhas and the Arahant disciples. But you can include the Aryans also, because they are on their way to out of samsara. The 8th sutta at Savatthi, standing to one side, that Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Those who are utterly muddled about things, who may be led into others' doctrines, fast asleep, they have not yet awakened. It is time for them to awaken. And the Buddha said, those who are unmuddled about things, who cannot be led into others' doctrines, those awakened ones, having rightly known, fare evenly amidst the uneven. So the Deva is talking about ordinary beings, Putujanas, and the Buddha is talking about Aryans. The 9th sutta at Savatthi, standing to one side, that Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. There is no taming here for one fond of conceit, nor is there sagehood for the unconcentrated. Though dwelling alone in the forest, heedless, one cannot cross beyond the realm of death. And the Buddha said, having abandoned conceit, well concentrated, with lofty mind, everywhere released, while dwelling alone in the forest, diligent, one can cross beyond the realm of death. These devas, because they are in the forest, sometimes they see monks coming into the forest to practice. Sometimes they come alone. But some of them, like here, the deva says, fond of conceit, still has the ego. So one has cannot let go of the ego. One cannot cross beyond the realm of death. And then also one who is unconcentrated. So the Deva says, though dwelling alone in the forest, heedless, one cannot cross beyond the realm of death. Sometimes certain monks, they go and live alone in the forest, but they are not using effort, or not using effort in the right way. So even though they seem to dwell alone, but they cannot attain liberation. But the Buddha says, if a person abandons conceit and cultivates concentration, And then dwelling in the forest alone and diligent. Diligence is very important. Then only you can cross the realm of death. 10th Sutta, at Savatthi, standing to one side, that Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. Those who dwell deep in the forest, peaceful, leading the holy life, eating but a single meal a day, why is their complexion so serene? And the Blessed One said, they do not sorrow over the past, nor do they hanker for the future. They maintain themselves with what is present, hence their complexion is so serene. Through hankering for the future, through sorrowing over the past, fools dry up and wither away like a green reed cut down. So here, the Deva, he sees monks who dwell alone in the forest and eat one meal a day and leading a very hard life. And yet they look so peaceful, so contented. And he asked why. And the Buddha said, because they do not sorrow over the past. Many of us, we think of the past and we have remorse, we have regret. We keep thinking of the past. Many people, for example, if a person, boyfriend, girlfriend relationships break up, and then they keep thinking of the past, and they become so miserable, and sometimes they commit suicide. But so a monk practicing the right way, you do not sorrow over the past, and you do not hanker for the future. You don't worry about the future. Those who are ambitious will think about the future. And the Buddha said, they maintain themselves with what is present, hence their complexion is so serene. So a person who practices the holy path is always mindful of his object of meditation. He always has to bring his mind back to his object. In other words, he has to remember to contemplate his object of meditation. That's why the word sati is called recollection, remembering your object of meditation. So it is not, sati is not general mindfulness, but always remembering to bring your mind back to your object of meditation. So if a person constantly has sati, bringing back his mind to his meditation object, then his mind is in the present. He does not think of the past, he does not think of the future. When you think of the past, you have sorrow, you have remorse. When you think of the future, you have a lot of worries. So without thinking of these two extremes, you are mindful of the here and now, then you'll be happy. Now we come to the second section, the 11th Sutta in the whole Samyutta. Thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Bhikkhus. Let's stop here for a while. This Blessed One normally is a translation for the word Bhagava. Bhagava, or sometimes Bhagawan, in certain books, is a term of respect for a holy man. It's called Bhagava. And this word Bhikkhu, Bhikkhu is a term for Buddhist monks. And it was coined by the Buddha. It comes from the word big. Big is became the English word beg. So Bhikkhu means a beggar. So that's why a lay person should never call a monk Bhikkhu. Only the Buddha is qualified to call a monk Bhikkhu. It's a way to discipline the monks, put down their ego, to remember that they are beggars. So lay people during the Buddha's time always refer to the monks as Bhante. And then we see in the suttas that even the monks call the Buddha Bhante, which means reverend or reverend sir. So here the Buddha addressed the monks, bhikkhus. Sometimes it's translated as monks. And the monks replied, Venerable Sir, or Bhante, Bhante or Bhadanta. The Blessed One said, once in the past, bhikkhus, or monks, a certain Devata of the Tavatimsa host was reveling in the Nandana grove, supplied and endowed with the 5 cords of celestial sensual pleasure, accompanied by a retinue of celestial nymphs. On that occasion he spoke this verse, they do not know bliss who have not seen Nandana, the abode of the glorious male Devas belonging to the host of 30. When this was said, monks, a certain Devata replied to that Devata in verse, "Don't you know, you fool, that maxim or the saying of the Arahants, impermanent are all formations, their nature is to arise and vanish. Having arisen, they cease, their appeasement is blissful." This chant, sometimes we chant anicca vata sankhara upada vaya dhammino upaditva nirujanti te sang upasamo sukho. This chant is used in a funeral when somebody passes away. So this Tavatimsa heaven is the heaven of the 30 or 33 because there are 30 or sometimes they mention 30, sometimes they mention 33. The Deva Rajas there number 30 They're like our Sultan. They are leaders There are 30 or 33 of them. That's why it's called Tavatimsa heaven. So and in this heaven there is a very beautiful garden called the Nandana Grove. So when you are reborn in that heaven, you enjoy all kinds of heavenly pleasures in that Nandana Grove. So this Deva says, anybody who has not seen Nandana Grove, they don't know what happiness is. But this the other Deva, he's smarter. So he said, don't you know what the Arahants say? Then he quoted this, impermanent are all formations. All the things in the world are impermanent. The nature is to arise and vanish. Having arisen, they cease. Their appeasement is blissful. The appeasement means the ceasing of all formations, the ceasing of all things in the world is real peace, because that peace is permanent peace. 1.12 At Savatthi, standing to one side, the Devata recited this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. One who has sons delight in sons. One with cattle delights in cattle. Acquisitions truly are a man's delight. Without acquisitions, one does not delight. And the Buddha said, one who has sons sorrows over sons. One with cattle sorrows over cattle. Acquisitions truly are a man's sorrows. Without acquisitions, one does not sorrow. So here you see, the Deva is saying that when you have property, you have sons and you have property, then you are a happy man. But the Buddha says the opposite. One who has sons sorrows over sons. This one just reminds me, the other day one of our Samanera here came to ordain. He brought the brother along. So the brother was in a hurry to go back. Then I asked why. I said, because the son has become a drug addict, so got caught by police. So you see, one who has sons sorrows over sons, especially nowadays. One who has daughters also sorrows over daughters. Sometimes the daughter runs away from home. Then you have cattle, you have to worry about your cattle. You have property, you have to worry about your property. So if a person does not have anything, he has nothing to worry about. Actually, we came into this world empty-handed, with nothing. We're going to go off empty-handed. So why you want to have so much things? We do our duty, whatever our duty is. And then if we get, okay. If we don't get, also okay. We leave everything to our karma. The 13th Sutta at Savatthi, standing to one side, that Devata spoke this verse in the presence of the Blessed One. There is no affection like that for a son, no wealth equal to cattle. There is no light like the sun. Among the waters, the ocean is supreme. And the Buddha said, there is no affection like that for oneself, no wealth equal to grain. There is no light like wisdom. Among the waters, the rain is supreme. So you see, the Buddha, the Deva says, there is no love like that for a son. But the Buddha says there is no love like that for oneself. Because even though whatever we like or whatever we love, the love for oneself is the greatest. Because of our ego, we love ourselves the most. If you say you love somebody more than yourself, you are hypocritical. And then he says there is no wealth equal to cattle, but the Buddha says there is no wealth equal to grain. Maybe because grain, you can, I'm not sure why, you can grow, you can sell, you can fill your stomach, everything. There's no light like wisdom. The Deva says there's no light like the sun. The sun is so bright, but the Buddha says there's no light like wisdom. Because people like the Buddha, when they are enlightened, their light shine forth from their head. And this light can illuminate many world systems. But ordinary beings cannot see. And then among the waters, the rain is supreme. When the rain comes, it gives life. Actually, in the sutta, the Buddha says, life depends on water. Only now scientists know that actually, like they send a spacecraft to Mars and anywhere. They want to look for water. If there's any source of water, then they know that at one time there was life. So the Buddha, so long ago, 2,500 years ago, the Buddha already knew that. Now only scientists know. The 14th Sutta. The Khattiya or warrior is the best of bipeds, two-legged beings. The ox, the best of quadrupeds. A maiden is the best of wives. The firstborn, the best of sons. And the Buddha said, the Buddha is the best of bipeds, a steed, the best of quadrupeds. An obedient woman is the best of wives. A dutiful son, the best of sons. Here, this Deva says the noble caste or the warrior is the best of two-footed beings. But the Buddha says the best of two-footed beings is the Buddha, the awakened one, the enlightened one. And then the Deva says the ox is the best of four-footed beings. The Buddha says the steed, a good horse, is the best of quadrupeds. And then the Deva says a maiden is the best of wives. In other words, a young wife. But the Buddha says an obedient woman is the best of wives. And then the Deva says the firstborn is the best of sons. But the Buddha says a dutiful boy or obedient son is the best of sons. Some people, they have many children, but when they are old, not one of the children want to look after them. But you have a good son or a good daughter, one is enough when you grow old. That obedient son or daughter will look after you. The 15th Sutta. When the noon hour sets in and the birds have settled down, the mighty forest itself murmurs. How fearful that appears to me, the Deva said. And the Buddha said, when the noon hour sets in and the birds have settled down, the mighty forest itself murmurs. How delightful that appears to me. So here the Deva is saying in the noon, around noon time, all the birds have quietened down and the forest is so quiet and still. He finds that fearful. But the Buddha says at that time the Buddha finds it so delightful because it's so peaceful. Nobody to disturb his meditation, his bliss, his peace. 1.16 The Deva said, drowsiness, lethargy, lazy stretching, discontent, torpor after meals. Because of this, here among beings, the noble path does not appear. And the Buddha said, drowsiness, lethargy, lazy stretching, discontent, torpor after meals. When one dispels this with energy, the noble path is cleared. So here the Deva must have seen some monks after eating a lot. They are very drowsy. The mind is lethargic, lazy, not inclined to motion, and torpor, sloth and torpor after meals. So because of that, now eating too much, this monk does not see the noble path. But the Buddha says, if the monk is energetic, puts in a lot of effort, then all the drowsiness, lethargy, torpor, etc. will clear away. And then he sees the noble path clearly. 17th Sutta. The ascetic life is hard to practice and hard for the inept or unskillful to endure. How many are the obstructions there in which the fool founders? How many days can one practice the ascetic life if one does not rein in one's mind? one would founder with each step, under control of one's intentions. And I think the Buddha replied, drawing in the mind's thoughts, as a tortoise draws its limbs into its shell, independent, not harassing others, fully quenched, a bhikkhu would not blame anyone. So the Deva is saying that a monk who is unskillful will find the ascetic life, the holy life, very hard to practice. And there are many obstructions for him to founder, means to fail, to fall down. But the Buddha says that the monk should draw in the thoughts, just like a tortoise draws its limbs into its shell, and then he can be fully quenched. The 18th Sutta, the Deva says, is there a person somewhere in the world who is restrained by a sense of shame, one who draws back from blame, as a good horse does from the whip? And the Buddha says, few are those restrained by a sense of shame, who fare always mindful. Few, having reached the end of suffering, fare evenly amidst the uneven. So, the Deva is asking whether there's someone who has a sense of shame. And the Buddha says very few who are collected. And then the 19th Sutta, the Deva says, don't you have a little hut? Don't you have a little nest? Don't you have any lines extended? Are you free from bondage? And the Buddha says, surely I have no little hut. Surely I have no little nest. Surely I have no lines extended. Surely I am free from bondage. And the Deva asks, what do you think I call a little hut? What do you think I call a little nest? What do you think I call lines extended? What do you think I call bondage? And the Buddha replied, it's a mother that you call a little hut, a wife that you call a little nest, sons you call lines extended, craving that you tell me is bondage. And the Deva said, it's good that you have no little hut, good that you have no little nest, good that you have no lines extended, good that you are free from bondage. So here, the Deva is asking a riddle, asking the Buddha whether he has a hut, nest, lines extended. And then the Buddha says he has none of these. Then the Deva tests him, asks him, do you know what I mean when I say a little hut, a nest and the lines extended? And the Buddha says, yes. The Buddha says, hut refers to the mother. Once a person renounces, he's supposed to renounce a family, so he has no mother, no father, doesn't have a wife, the nest, and doesn't have children, lines extended. And the Deva praised him. Now we come to the 20th Sutta. But it's a bit long, so maybe tonight I stop here. You don't have any question? You see here in this Samyutta, all the suttas have to do with experiences of the Buddha with these devas. Later, maybe you will come across some other suttas in the same Samyutta where other monks also have experience with these devas. Their experience is stated here. Yeah. I think normally when they say when the night is advanced, means the middle watch, which is between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. Usually, devas in the heavenly realm, they are enjoying themselves so much that they don't think so much of making merit. But there are some who may have known the Dhamma in the previous life, then they would want to do merit. For example, Sakadeva Raja, it seems he liked to make offerings to the Arahant Mahakassapa. Mahakassapa was a very ascetic monk. So if you, being an Arahant, if you give food to him, it's very meritorious. So you have later books like the Dhammapada commentary, where they may have made up some stories about this Sakadeva Raja always trying to make offering to these Arahants, especially like Mahakassapa. Yeah.
And you see the Devas will, make themselves as a person, and after they help them, they just vanish.
So, very probably true.
Because in the book, you see that they become a person. When they are in the forest, right? You say, accordingly to the book, I think forest out of nowhere, there's a person help, and then after when you walk, they come back.
Yeah, because these devas and also ghosts, they are psychic. So, if they don't want us to see them, we don't see them. But when they want us to see them, then they will appear for us to see. You see, for a monk to go into the deep forest, it's a rare sight, you see. So these devas will all notice. So they will immediately can gauge his mind. They can read his mind. So they will know immediately what type of person this is. So because of that, they will be protective. They know this is a good person, a sincere cultivator. I have an experience also because I stayed in this cave in Penang Hill for 7 years. So I'm sure there are devas around. One day a man came and he had been practicing Taoism. So some people they practice Taoism, they have some spirit inside of them. So when he came into this cave, immediately like somebody strangled him. He could not breathe. Could not breathe. And he had to sit down. And after a while he felt better. So maybe the Deva thought this was a bit of a threat. Give him a warning. So these things happen. Any other thing? Okay, now we transfer merit.